Hey everyone, welcome to the show. I'm James, that's Katie, and of course that makes this episode 9 of Circles and Squares. And Kate, how you been since we last got together?
I'm doing fantastic. I think as we alluded to in the last episode, I've got a very big game that I'm really excited to talk about with you guys this week. So
Ghost of Tsushima, you've had that for what, 4 or 5 days now? I forget when it was Friday that came out.
It was Friday it came out. I actually didn't end up playing it over the weekend because I wasn't home, but I've been just absolutely...
What timing not to be home.
God, I know, it was horrible, but I've been absolutely binging it since I have been home. Like, whatever, finals coming up in school, who cares? Like, I got some samurai business to deal with.
Hey, look, it's all about priorities, right? Mm-hmm. So you've been liking it.
Absolutely,
obviously.
Absolutely.
We'll get into that in just a second. But before we get the show started, just because it's our 10th episode coming up for next time, we'd love it if we could do a little bit of a listener mail section coming up. So if anyone has any questions for us, they could, gaming related, obviously, other random stuff, I guess, if you really wanted to, send them over to us before we record our next episode at circlesandsquarespod@gmail.com. And we will get to each and every one of those as you send them in if it works out.
Yeah, absolutely. And we will make a little special segment for them on the next upcoming episode since it's a bit of an anniversary for us. But don't feel like it has to be around a specific episode. You're welcome to send us questions or feedback, anything at any time. We'd love to read them, and we like to hear you guys just as passionate about games as we are. So
we'll give you a shout out for sure. So Kate, let's get the show started. Today we are going to be talking obviously about what we've been playing, including Ghost of Tsushima for the first segment. And then after the break, we're going to talk about a bit of news, including we got to see Geoff Keighley use the Dualsense controller for the first time. And then finally, to close out the show, at the last segment, you have Choose Your Own Adventure for me. I have no idea what this is about or what the topic or anything is, but I'm excited to get to that. Of course, let's get started though. Kate, tell me all about the Ghost.
All right. Well, okay. I've had to prepare myself with not going on for the next 5 hours. So I'll get this out of the way quickly. The game is absolutely gorgeous.
We need to say that off the start.
We need to say that off the start. If you've seen anything about this game online, it's the picture mode, it's the absolutely beautiful environments and scenery, it's running through a field of flowers on your horse. This game is absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah, I remember watching, just to get in the state of play when we had the episode a few times back when we saw The Last of Us and this in the state of plays for the same news section, and I was just like, back then I think the thing that stuck out to us most about Ghost was like those environments. So I'm so happy that they're turning out to be like even more impressive than like what we expected.
Absolutely. Like I probably by the time I'm done this game will have an extra like 5 hours of playtime just from like, wow, this is really pretty. I'm going to run around in these trees a little bit longer because, like, holy shit, it's gorgeous.
5 hours of playtime and 5 gigs of screenshots saved onto your PS4.
It's only been one so far, but we'll see. So that is obviously a big thing. I will say that so far the story is quite interesting, and they've got a really nice, well-rounded cast of characters that you sort of follow along with, as well as Jin, your main playable character. But I'm not going to go too much into the story because... that's obviously
it's still super fresh, right?
Yeah, it's super fresh. That's obviously quite spoiler territory. And then also, if I'm being honest, I haven't really done too much of the main story. I've been very much captivated with like, ooh, there's a different location over there. Like, ooh, there's like a point of interest on my map.
Following
and
those
like,
little foxes around.
I've absolutely just gone down the rabbit hole with like exploring the world and the map. So the main quests have sort of fallen to the wayside, but they are good so far. But maybe that will be another episode.
Oh, I'm sure you'll do a follow up on this for sure.
Yeah, exactly. So I guess going forward, I wouldn't say there's really any heavy spoilers. There's going to be maybe some things that you'll encounter in the first couple hours. So if you really want to know absolutely nothing, maybe take a pause on this. But for anyone who's not extremely like,
spoiler alert, you're talking like skill tree stuff. Or
exactly.
Whatever,
maybe
right?
some skill tree stuff or like, a couple like different types of environments you might go into. So it's going to be pretty safe, but I will warn you just in case because I'd hate to spoil something. And the other thing I would like to specify too is this game I think is fantastic, but it's definitely not a flawless game. And the game is really clicking with what I like in a game and a specific type of play style I have. So I wanted to kind of color my my review of it and my experience, because if it's not for you, that might be something. There's certain things in the game that maybe won't excite every player or might bother you if you have a different play style. But basically, I feel like the game really like clicks and speaks to me. Like the design philosophy is amazing. Like this game is just full of small little nuances in the world design, and it is so incredibly refreshing. And like it's such a unique experience. Even if at first glance it doesn't really look like an extremely innovative game.
Yeah.
Like, I remember watching some of the footage before it had come out, and I expected going into it that it would be like a competent but like just basically like a AAA action title.
Yeah, like one of those, Assassin's Creed style open world type things.
Yeah, exactly, which isn't a bad thing, but like I wasn't expecting like something extremely unique, but it really feels that way, and it's not any one individual aspect of the game. It's everything kind of as like a cohesive whole. So like the design is just so intentional, and it just really sticks out as having like a really strong theme and identity, and the game knows what it wants to be, and everything almost without fail is geared towards that.
Yeah.
So like there's the nature in this game, and everything is sort of revolving around that sort of theme. So when
it's very like open and outdoors for the most part. Right? There's not a lot of inside kind of sections.
Yeah, exactly. There's buildings you go into, obviously, but there are like a couple small rooms that have like maybe an item you can pick up in them, or like someone to talk to. Like there's not a lot of like going into buildings or doing tons of like like big siege type sort of things. It's very much like about the world that you're in. So as you're playing, like you encounter like birds or foxes, and those will, if you follow them, will lead you to some kind of like treasure or give you an upgrade. And like it feels really organic. There's no mini map or quest marker.
There's almost no HUD.
The HUD is basically like it's basically not there, but the game guides you in these really innovative but like also like very obvious and clear ways. So instead of having a mini map or a HUD when you decide to go to a location, or if you're in the middle of a quest and it's telling you like direction of where you're supposed to go, you get like the wind blows in that direction and you follow the wind. So it's so organic, and like there's no artificial time where the game is telling you go here, do this. It's like you have those visual cues that are they're so easy to follow, and they seem so obvious, but they're so unique at the same time.
Yeah, and you know what I like so much about following the wind, not to get stuck too much on this topic, is like I find sometimes too, if you have like a waypoint marker off in the distance, you're like focused in on that, and you may miss like stuff that's going on around you depending how much of a hurry you're in to get somewhere.
Yeah.
And so you kind of take the scenery in more, I think, from the bit that I've seen this game.
Yeah, exactly. And it's the same problem with like a mini map or something too. You're always looking at it like, am I on the right direction? Am I going in the right place? But instead now you're just watching the environment you're running through on your horse. And like, it's so beautiful too, because as the wind picks up, all the leaves fall from the trees, and the leaves that are on the ground spur up with the wind. And it's just like they had like the most amazing gardener in this world. Like everything is just like nature and forest and beautiful and fields and then sunsets and like thunder and lightning. And then there's a fox, and you follow the fox because that's kind of exciting. And he sort of looks over his shoulder at you to see if you're following. And like the game never tells you outright you should follow this fox, but the way that they've designed it to move and then kind of check on you, it really like entices you. Like this isn't just an animal, this is something extra to do.
Have the rewards for following those animals been like substantial so far?
They have been quite nice. So the game doesn't have much in terms of like upgrades or like unlockables in the sense of like new things. You're not going to find different types of weapons to use. Like you get your katana, and that's your katana, and you can like
there's not like 5 different katanas.
Yeah, exactly. Like you upgrade it to make it stronger, but like you can't be like, I'm going to use a hammer, or I'm going to use whatever type of weapon. So the fox shrines give you various like they're called charms, and you put them on to give you passive effects basically. So like you don't level up in this game with stat upgrades, or like you put points into dex or strength or whatever. You just choose your different equipment that gives you a slightly different playstyle, or you upgrade your equipment with resources. So they are quite beneficial to follow and do these extra things. But at the same time, like if you didn't find them, you wouldn't be penalized.
Yeah, or almost if you got stuck, maybe you can go look for a few, but it's not like you have to, get bogged down if you don't want.
Yeah, exactly. So there's all of those things. What I like too is there's no healing resource in the game. So you don't pick up like potions or like food that heals you. You get a resource instead called your resolve, which is basically like Jin's like, no, I'm a samurai. I can do
tough.
this. Like,
I'm tough. I don't need any help.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's like strike a confident pose kind of thing, and you can use that for healing in fights, but it refills when you do well. So like getting a good parry or like mercy killing an enemy that's like wounded will refill it. So that's kind of neat. And then it like those sort of things all draw back to in the same way that like nature guides you. It's very thematic. Like everything is intentionally decided to have a spot in the game. They aren't just mechanics because a game needs a mechanic. They're integrations
it's like fundamentally
in
the world. Yeah,
exactly. Like integrated things in the world that like are thought out to make sense or to give reason to them, and like to increase your health bar. Instead of leveling up, you go find hot springs and you like you go into them, and then you reflect on like your past and things like that, and then that increases your health. So like I love all the little like nuances and explanations, and it's just so incredibly immersive to have all these concepts
just a simple change instead of other games that'd be like, well, find 5 of these red potions and then you can put them together. Like this is very much more like they're telling you the story and they make sense rather than just arbitrary video game items being like strewn around.
Yeah, exactly. It's amazing like how these small things make such a big impact on the game. Like I don't even know if I would necessarily pick up on them too much as watching someone play, but to actually sit down and play it, it's like, it's such a big influence from such small details. So obviously the other big thing aside from exploration in the world is the combat, which I am very much enjoying. And it's not what I expected, but I think it's fantastic. So that really minimal HUD plays into the combat as well. The only thing that shows up for you is you get a very small health bar, which is only there during the combat, and then also like whatever resolve resource that you have. And then
that's in the bottom left, right?
It's in the bottom left. Yeah, it's in the bottom left of your screen. It's very small. You also get the health bars for enemies as you fight them, which is so small on top of their character model that like I honestly don't even notice it half the time. But of course you can like adjust that as well. You can even go like more minimal with the HUD, which I didn't even think would be possible, but it is. And like you can change it so you don't see your health, which is scary.
That would be intense. I wouldn't want to play that way.
Scary and intense. But you could if you want. Which is interesting because the combat is actually quite a bit more difficult than I anticipated.
Yeah, I'd love your opinion on the no lock-on as well, just because I know that's the thing that people have been really talking about with this.
Yes. It is really interesting. So I think with the context, the combat is difficult. I will say, like, when you come up against a crowd of enemies, they can very easily overwhelm you. Like, they don't take a number when they walk into the fight and wait for their turn. Like, they will come hit you when someone else is fighting you. Like, and you can you take quite a bit of damage if you mistime a dodge or a parry. So the combat is very simple in terms of like your options. At least at the very beginning, you have your light attack, your heavy attack, block, parry, dodge, like all your kind of like, you know, the usual things that you get. But like you do have to be quite like quick on your feet. And then you also have stance changes which you unlock as you progress.
Right, and those are kind of like helping you with certain enemy types.
Yeah, so right? What they do is they slightly change how your light and your heavy attacks work. And then they also are better equipped to dealing with certain types of enemies. So the first one you get is good against enemies who have shields. It kind of breaks their guard a little bit better and gets you through the shield. And then the ones that you get later, which I won't spoil, they're better against different types of enemies. So the idea is that like you're kind of switching those on the fly, depending on what your enemy you're fighting. But obviously, yeah, the big thing is that the HUD is very small. There's no enemy reticle for targeting, which then extrapolates to mean that you can't press a button to toggle the enemy you're fighting, right? Like in a lot of those games, like, okay, like it's tough to deal with crowds, but you sort of like just toggle and switch who you're fighting. Whereas in this one, you engage with the enemy just by positioning near them, and like depending on who you're facing and who your camera is kind of angled towards, that's who you're engaged with. So
is that tough to tell sometimes? I
found it at first to be a little bit strange and kind of difficult to tell. But now I'm really enjoying it, and it like harkens back again to what I'm going to get tired of reiterating, but that sense of like, it's just so permanent in the world and like natural and organic feeling. Like the enemy doesn't have a glowing outline to show you that you're targeting him. Like Jin's posture is towards them.
It's really much those like, small details.
He's engaged in that small detail, and that once you know exactly to look for that instead of like the usual thing that as a game mechanic you'd look for, then it becomes obvious and you really get in tune with like those small little visual cues. So I think if anyone's kind of struggling with that right now, just maybe give it a few fights to get used to it, because it is.
Well, it's a lot different than other third-person actions, right? Like I can't really think to, on my mind right now of one that doesn't really have that kind of targeting system if you want it.
Yeah, exactly. Like usually it's the option to like target or just play like totally unlocked. But in this, there is no unlocked. It's just targeting, but it's in their unique way of targeting. So I could see it maybe not being for everyone, but I love it. And I think it is so incredibly like stylish as well, because you're looking at just the characters' movements and their posture, and the way that they fight is like, it's like a dance. Like it's so choreographed. Like you'll slice someone with your sword, and then like on the last hit you'll kind of turn around and like wipe your blade off and then go on to fight the next person. Like it legitimately feels, and it's funny because Sekiro had this as their big thing. Like every fight is like an epic samurai sword duel, and like while I absolutely love Sekiro, it didn't feel like a realistic sword fight a lot of the time. It was like a cool epic video game and I loved it, but it wasn't grounded. Whereas this game, I really feel like it has that kind of like grounding in.
Really? Yeah. You feel like that? I'm surprised by that, because if someone would have told me which would be more realistic in the combat, like I definitely would have thought Sucker Punch would have made something a lot more, lighthearted and jumping around and
I think at least like right now from what I've played, like the fights in Sekiro are really good, but they last so long. You get so many hits in on an enemy. I guess maybe not like the couple like grunt enemies, but like you fight a lot of like big monsters and like foes that you'll be hacking away at for 10 minutes. So like it kind of retracts from that sort of like realistic like samurai duel, and like that's not a bad thing. It's just it's its own unique thing. Yeah. Whereas this really much feels like you're watching a like samurai film, and like people are getting mowed down.
I think they said they did like hours and hours of research and watching old samurai films and whatnot to make this, like I think Sekiro is more, it's a different kind of game really, but it's more rooted in a bit more of like fantasy. Whereas I think now that we know more about Ghosts and have seen it, like, yes, obviously it's not like 100% realistic, but it's also very much like modeled after those old samurai kind of films and tales. Yeah,
exactly. I think they've exaggerated it in all the right areas to make it more epic and exciting, but it's very much like these are real people fighting, not like gods and big epic monsters. So I think that's great. One thing I have to say about the combat too is there's the standoffs, which are so incredibly cool. Like I won't spoil them too much because I think it's just something that you need to experience. But like if you ever are walking around and you get that, like it'll be like you're up on the D-pad, press that standoff button. always start a fight with a standoff. So that's the kind of like, I guess, the honorable ways to play is those samurai duels and taking the enemy's head on. There is another section of the game that's the ghost or stealth sections. Yeah. Which this is where it leads me into sort of the flaws I have with the game.
Have you found it glitchy or like what's... I know some people have said they've had problems with it.
Some people have said they've had problems with it. I haven't found any sort of like really game-breaking issues with it. but it's the aspect of the game that feels like it's lacking in that cohesive vision for me. And it feels like it was added as a gameplay mechanic because people like to play stealth more than like it really fits in.
That's too bad.
At least early on, like some missions kind of force you to play a certain style because it's, you know, the mission you're playing once you're out of the open world sections. And so the first stealth mission I did was quite interesting because it, in the story, challenged Jin's values as a samurai. So he's obviously like the whole like honorable, like you look a man in the eyes as you kill him and like you kill him with honor.
Right.
But sort of he's challenged in that in the way that like you do your first stealth kill because you're with a character that encourages you to be like, this is your only way of dealing with a situation. If you die and don't save whoever we're trying to save, that's not worth your honor. And he's kind of challenged in that, like, and like that obviously is going to be a big part of the story, and it's really interesting. And that scene was really well written. It was actually quite gruesome, and like very emotional. But I feel like that kind of gets undermined by adapting the dishonorable style into like your whole play style. Like if you go into every camp, like subterfuge and the sneaking around, like I guess maybe that's an interesting way for like Jin to develop as a character, but it just seems like kind of a funny thing to do after such a big story moment and then like and now I'm an assassin. So yeah, it didn't really vibe with me. Like,
so how does it feel though? How playing like with those skills?
And playing with those skills, like I haven't spec'd into that skill tree, so I don't have all of it yet. But I feel like the AI isn't really the most competent with it. Like, if they discover you, but you're sort of, you know, up in a funny place, maybe you're high up, they don't really come chase you up. They sort of just like shoot you with arrows, and it doesn't really feel like as dynamic that they're really like engaging with you as much. So I feel like the stealth is kind of a little bit of a miss.
That's too bad. Especially considering like last time talking about the way the enemies behave in The Last of Us. This seems like such a stark comparison. Yeah,
exactly. Like I don't know if that's something that will get patched in or changed, but it did feel like a little bit of a disappointment. For me, luckily, like I'm not really speccing into that style, so it's not really affecting my game very much. But I think if you are someone who goes in and wants that kind of a play style, it might be, you know, you might not get as much out of the game as if you played it in the more honorable way.
Yeah, I guess it's more like, you know, action first, stealth is more of an afterthought, unfortunately, because I mean I personally would have been more interested in the stealth. I mean just from like what I would be interested to play it as, but just hearing the things I've heard, I think I probably wouldn't do that now.
Yeah, exactly. And the game is quite flexible. You can do some of both. Like you're never locked out of one of the options, but it definitely feels like they put more of their development time and focus on the actual like sword play mechanics than the
I'd be really interested
AI.
to find that out if there's ever like a, you know, documentary or like something written on the game's development.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see if they comment on it. So the one thing I will say about stealth is the bows feel really good. So while I don't take the stealth option, sometimes at the beginning of a fight, I will take a couple people out by bows, like from range with my bow, at first, just to kind of thin the numbers a little bit, because it's got a nice weight to it. It is a really satisfying like headshot plink.
Yeah. Always good.
Always good. So, I think overall the game is really neat, and it's very close to being an absolute masterpiece, and it's sort of held back by a few small flaws. But the game is so good at what it intends to do, and it's such an immersive and really like refreshing experience that I think it's easy to overlook those flaws, or at least it is for me as someone who's playing in a way that I don't encounter them as often as another player might.
Yeah, right. I think it's totally one of those, like, it's by no means a perfect or flawless, you know, flawlessly made game, but if it's what you're looking for, then the flaws it has aren't going to like take you out of it or ruin it for you, right?
Like I think you'll get a lot more out of it than what it detracts from, and I think some of those flaws are created by having such a strong vision in the game, and like if it something fails to kind of meet the standard that the rest of the game is putting forth with such nice quality and like amazing level of detail, it stands out more than if a game that just, you know, is decent all the way through. So I highly recommend it. I'm really excited to play more and maybe, you know,
I'm excited to
some more.
See more. But I want to start playing it too, but I just, it's not the one on for me right now. I'll get to it eventually.
Absolutely.
Maybe should. On, you know what I'll save it for is probably getting a better version on PS5. We'll see.
I can only imagine how it'll look on PS5. Okay, so that was my kind of intensive, gaming experience for the week. Obviously, the other game that I played was I went through Erica.
Got to get those PS Plus games done.
PS Plus. Yeah, that was my pick, and I did pick it first, so I
hope it was good because you did that to yourself.
That's right. I put myself in this camp, and you know what? It was good. I'm very happy with my decision. So we talked about it last time, but if for some reason you missed the episode or you're not aware of the game, Erica is an interactive FMV game with kind of a mystery story. So I won't go obviously into the story again with this because that's major spoilers. That's 95% of the game.
Yeah, right. That's like the whole point. There's not much else to it.
I get it's a good story. I would say I liked it. The runtime felt really good. It was about 2 hours, so it kind of felt largely like watching a movie. You do have some control over it, like you get to certain points and you have to make choices like, I want to do X, Y, or Z, like here are 3 characters, which one are you going to go hang out with? Or like you're running away and you can go left, right, or like go try to hide in this room and like which direction do you go? So you get those kind of things. Then you also get like dialogue options, like how you want to respond to various characters. And I think I only played it one time through. So I can't say totally for certain how different some of the other options are.
Right.
But I did check out the achievements on it. And just based on some of those, it feels like you can have very widely different endings. So I think it did feel like your choices did influence the story quite a bit.
That's good at least. Because I feel like those games, if you're going to have a game where it's basically just a click your choices type of thing, you need to have more than just one. Yeah. Otherwise, you're kind of just reading a book,
Yeah, exactly. You do feel a little bit ripped off afterwards when you find out that nothing you did actually mattered. So I think this one was quite good. There were a couple achievements that we looked at after and we're like, oh, that is not what we did. Like, that is very shocking. So
maybe it would be worth
maybe it would be worth well, we considered it. I did play it with 2 other people, so we kind of played it as a group and sort of made group decisions. Yeah. So we considered playing it a second time. We haven't yet, but that's
I mean, I guess it's short enough, right? It's a couple hours. If you got nothing to do, you may as well check it out if you feel like it.
Yeah, exactly. The other kind of gameplay part of it is there's this interesting integration of controls where you do it all by touch. So the game has the capability of doing it on the DualShock, on the little touchpad, but it actually recommends when you start up the game to use your phone with an app integration that they had. So I downloaded the app. It was recommended, and it's sort of interesting. Like you get to different parts and the game sort of like pauses and it'll make you interact with it. So like at one point you open a lighter, so you have to like flick it up and then flick on your screen to turn the lighter on, or like you open a ribbon by using your 2 fingers and like pulling outwards as if you're actually opening it.
A bit of a gimmick, really.
It's quite gimmicky. I would say generally they were like kind of enjoyable and fun. Sometimes they did feel a little unnecessary and finicky though, and sort of like, are
they really repetitive? Like you have to do it over and over?
There's some that are quite nice. Like the ribbon is neat because it's a unique sort of action. The lighter is nice because it's got that satisfying flick. But there are times when it's like, okay, look in this box, and you have to just slightly pull the box towards you, and then you look in the box. Mm-hmm. And like, there's one scene where we opened a briefcase, but it was like pop up each like individual side and then like pull the briefcase towards you and then like take something out of the briefcase, and it was like 6 or 7 different movements just to open, like just to get a piece of paper out of a briefcase. Yeah. So like some felt like kind of like, interesting, and then some of them felt like they were just like, we need more stuff for you to do, so like slightly bring this one object closer to look at it when like you were already looking at it. So I think it didn't fully hit the mark, but at best it was interesting. At worst it was like, kind of whatever.
Yeah. Fair enough.
One thing I would have liked is I found that like some of them were kind of difficult to fully do. Like it would have you like open something by turning it 180 degree or like all the way in a circle, and you'd get like 80% of the way there, and then you'd be like at the edge of your phone and it would flick back.
Oh, that's frustrating too.
It's sort of like there was one, and it was like turning on or putting a record on, and it took me like 7 or 8 tries, and we're all cracking up because like you see it gets so close and then it doesn't happen, and we're laughing. But like thinking back on it now, it would have been interesting if maybe turning something halfway would have had a different outcome than turning it all the way or not at all. So like, I think maybe they could have expanded on that to make it more interesting as opposed to just being a gimmick.
That's fair.
But overall, I really enjoyed it. I think the game's biggest strength is that the acting and the filming is really impressive. There's some very surprising, seamless transitions between like the part you interact with and then like how they actually just continue on with the film, because like it's all filmed with real actors and real people. It's like watching a movie, but like it has to slow down and stop for you to like pull the objects closer. And like you wouldn't necessarily know that it's a game watching it. Like it's really very seamless and very impressive how they integrated the two. So yeah, cool. I think if you're into those kind of games and you have 2 hours to kill, like it's kind of neat just as something different.
You'd recommend it for me then as a fan of
I
like,
would,
these style
yeah.
things?
I think I would, like, for a unique kind of like fun choose your own. Even like if you want a movie night.
Yeah, right.
Play this instead of watching a movie one night. It's quite fun. So
cool.
Yeah.
Maybe I will. Never know. Yeah, so for PS Plus, if we're staying with the PS Plus games for the month, I, of course, avoided NBA 2K20 and picked up Rise of Tomb Raider. This is, 2015, 2016, I think I said, from Crystal Dynamics. And so this game, I was really looking forward to playing, I think, like I said before, just because of, it's on the list for a while. And I'm really glad that I tried it. I kind of have a bit of a love-hate thing going on with it right now, if I'm honest with you. And I think a lot of that is just because I'm coming off of The Last of Us and kind of how...
You have such high standards.
Well, it's not... I mean, I wasn't expecting that, right? But I'm talking in terms of like, when you really break it down, they're both like third-person, action, narrative-driven, kind of that style of game. And so... just because of like the smoothness of The Last of Us controls and like the menu and the story and everything, it's just so damn good that this is... I had to get past the first few hours of like, oh, this game is 5 years old, or I wish this control was on this button, or like, oh, why she's walking through snow and water with the same kind of animation and like or
doesn't have that level
clipping
of
through the
polish.
ground, like, and it's not necessarily the game's fault because it is a little bit older and whatever, and I'm trying not to be super biased just because of what I was playing last, but I even was thinking of it in terms of playing Uncharted 4 though, because that came out within a year's time, I think, of this,
right?
And even comparing
obviously
that,
quite a similar
now that's a much more apt comparison, right? And this game I think does some things quite a bit better than Uncharted 4, but it does a lot of things worse as well, as like kind of a bar. Uncharted's kind of, just to get them out of the way, I guess, Uncharted I find is like way more polished, and like the movement feels a lot better, it's smoother, the facial capture's better, the acting's better. I'm not all the way through Tomb Raider, so I can't really comment on the story, but I mean, like, the characters in Uncharted are just so likable, like it's arguably the best part of those.
The game has a lot of
those
personality
games.
For sure.
Yeah, totally. So this game, just to get off the bat, talking about voice acting, the voice acting is really not good for a lot of the characters in this game. I just want to say, like, and I think it's kind of intentional. Like, I haven't really played any old Tomb Raider games, but I went back and looked at some footage to check on this, and even back in those games, like, Laura's voice is so stereotypically British.
Right, like, she's like
that kind of thing.
The fake posh British.
Yeah, right, and that's exactly what her accent sounds like here. It's like so out of place and like, I think bad on purpose. I mean, no offense to the game, but I just really isn't.
But hey, if it's not bad on purpose, this is your out. This is your excuse. But yeah, absolutely bad on purpose.
Right. But I mean, some of the characters are fine, but you get a lot of those like, hey, I wonder where she is, like the random enemy number 1 type voices and whatever.
Right, yeah, grunt, miscellaneous grunt 7.
Exactly, yeah. So, but I mean, a few characters are good too, but I mean, Lara with a British accent, I'm just, I don't know, maybe because we have British family and whatever, it's just kind of like that other level of like, I've never actually met someone that really sounds like this, you know?
Yeah, it's that Hollywood English accent.
Something like that, but, that's kind of just the story. I'm not really playing for the story, to be honest. I've kind of already given up on checking out a lot of it. It's just very much like, gotta get here to do this, gotta get here to do that, like, what's the motivation? Oh, my dad was killed. Like, right, it's very shallow on the story end. Like, I don't really see a lot going on there, but where the game really shines is like some of the set pieces and the climbing that Laura has to do. I really actually prefer a lot of that to Uncharted. In comparison, just because Laura has a lot more at her disposal. Like, pretty much for Uncharted, you only have the rope whenever it's the grapple hook when it's available for Nate, and other than that, you're scaling walls and whatever, which is impressive in its own right. But in this game, Laura kind of climbs walls in the same way, but she can also do a little jump off of walls as well, so she can kind of scramble up to higher heights. And she also has a bow with a rope that you can unlock, so you can kind of pull different platforms downwards to you, stuff like that. So it's a lot more varied in its movement, which I really enjoy. And then I'm also really liking the tombs in this game. They're amazing set pieces, like solving out how to unlock each one and the puzzle that it contains, and just kind of going and doing, the different challenges, especially in the hidden optional tombs, are really visually impressive, if nothing else. Mm-hmm. And the thing I like about it too is that a lot of games, they would have, escape sequences when, ruins are crumbling and all this is going on. And a lot of games would handle that as like QuickTime events or press X, to jump this ledge. And what I really like about this game is, although sometimes it feels a little bit like janky, and maybe it would look a little better if it was pre-done with the cutscene, like the button press, you actually play through the majority of stuff in this as well, and you actually have to like jump with reflex and solve these quick platforming things on the fly as your things are crumbling, or like the room is flooding or something like that.
That's interesting. So it's more of like a gameplay sequence than just like a cinematic sequence that you affect a little bit.
Yeah, and I really appreciate that, because it adds to that tension. Like when you're playing something else, like I'll go back to Uncharted as the easy comparison. It's not that you don't know Nate's gonna make it, but he's gonna do most of the work by himself. Whereas with Lara Croft, I feel like it's a little bit more like intense for the player, and I think it's gone really well. So that's my favorite part of the game. Definitely is those temples. It's got a lot of customization that I wasn't really expecting. Like the game's kind of opens up in certain areas. It's very much like some linear missions, but there's big open environments, and you actually get to do a lot of upgrading of Laura's skills and like different guns and survival techniques. And it's pretty diverse. Like you can upgrade your guns for accuracy and whatnot. You can also get things like your enemies, when they drop their whatever supplies they drop, they can double the chance of that. You can do different arrows, like poison arrows or explosive ones, or the rope ones I talked about before. So it's got a little bit of a different customization thing as well, which I like, because it's just cool to play different ways sometimes. I really love the way the bow feels too. Like it's like you said about the headshots. Like this game very much satisfying headshots the same way. The other guns, I'm not sure if I'm such a big fan, and the stealth, like I said, it's serviceable, but it's not like the best. Right. So this game is very much like the spectacles are getting me through it, but I'm not like super drawn in by the story.
Right.
And
so
whatever.
Like, that kind of lines up with what my expectation of the game was, just from having seen it come out, and I guess like being a few years past once we've kind of progressed a little bit further in the industry. Is like, it looks like a solid game. It looks like it's entertaining and fun, but like nothing about it really like stood out as like raises it to that like classic masterpiece, like gotta play it sort of status.
And I'd love to know what my opinion on it would have been, when it came out, because I'm looking at it through like the glasses of 2020, which is a big change. The only other thing I wanted to say about the game, which is in big contrast to Tsushima, is that the scan mode in this game, like you can do one of those Arkham Asylum vision modes where you can everything gets pointed out to you, and like holy crap, this is the most broken I've ever seen this thing. Like you can literally, if you use Laura's special vision thing, whatever, I forget what it's called, it's scan mode, I'm pretty sure. It highlights like everything. So I find the problem is I have to consciously not use it, because when I'm going to solve all the tombs, it just highlight, like you click it and it's like, well, there's only one thing I can interact with that's not a chest. So I'm going to go open the chest, then I'm going to go over here and obviously do this to unlock the next thing. And then that thing will turn yellow, and it kind of just makes the puzzles really easy. Right.
It basically is like,
it's too hand-holdy, I think. And obviously like you can choose not to use it, but I guess it's a good thing. If you get stuck, you can easily unstick yourself, but it's like very, very forgiving.
Right. It's almost a little bit like patronizing, like, oh, you need some help? Here's this. Would you like me to cook dinner for you too? It's like, thank you, Laura.
Hey, Laura's
Croft.
out in the wilderness by herself a lot, she might be hungry. But yeah, that's Tomb Raider. Like, it's pretty good. I mean, if you're interested in those games, it's another one of those. Whether you're looking for it for against Uncharted or not, like I think I still would recommend Uncharted just because of the characters and whatnot, the polish, but this is great too overall. So,
That's awesome. Well, I'm glad that we both enjoyed our PS Plus games and no
pretty
one
good
had
month,
to
right?
play NBA.
That's a pretty good month. We still will have our NBA match at one time, maybe.
Maybe one day, yeah.
Yeah. Just quickly, I know we're getting a bit long here for what we've been playing, but I've been playing a lot of Moonlighter, and this has really sucked me in. It's another game that's kind of one of those, hey, this is something I wanted to play, and since I just beat a big, long Last of Us, I'll play this, shorter thing, but I've really gotten into this. And so you played Moonlighter also.
I did, yeah. I got it on Switch because it seemed like a really good, pick up and play for half an hour here and there kind of game. And it really was.
Yeah, it totally is. So this is basically like a Binding of Isaac type dungeon crawler, or the 2D Zelda type dungeons in there. But then the cool twist on it is when you find loot in the dungeons, like different things the enemies drop, you take it back to your town, and you actually are a shopkeeper in the town. So instead of just selling all the drops from the enemies to the store and then buying new armor, you actually have to put these items on sale in your store and set the price and open the shop, and people will come in and look at what you're selling, consider the price, and then they'll buy it, or they might not, and they'll give you feedback like, oh, that's way, little faces pop up to how satisfied they are with the price.
Yeah. And it's really cute because, sometimes they'll go up to an item and they'll be like an angry face. They're like, wow, the extortion on this slime. How dare you? Right. And then other times they bring it up to the counter and they're like, oh, this chump doesn't know how valuable this item is. And then you feel like, oh, crap,
I just wasted like thousands of dollars. But I just really love that system. Like I'm surprised how drawn in I am by the shopkeeping aspect. In the sense that it's really satisfying to go in the dungeons, get a big backpack full of loot, and then you're kind of looking through it as you're going. You're like, wow, I'm going to make a lot of money here. And then when you get back to the town, you end up making your money, and then you have various people through the city. Like there's an armory and a potion brewer and a few other ones you can unlock. And you can also put money into upgrading your store. So I recently just upgraded my cash register so that my patrons are more likely, they'll leave me a 10% tip now when they're buying stuff from me. End up making more money in the long run. You can advance your shop to have more shelving and a sale bin. You can also upgrade your bed, so when you go to sleep at night, you wake up with more health for your next dungeon run. Yeah, and it just really loops so well.
Yeah, it does. It's really neat, and it's such a cute creative spin on the dungeon crawling genre sort of thing. You go in and they go dungeon crawling themselves, I would say, is actually quite nice too. I think a lot of the weapons feel good, and it's got a nice challenge to it, and all the dungeons have a final boss that's quite interesting. It feels
very much like Enter the Gungeon type controls to me. It's just a lot more hand-to-hand combat, but the movement I feel is quite similar.
Yeah, the role I think is very similar to the Gungeon. Absolutely. Yeah. But I think it's kind of a combination with that, and then like you said, a 2D Zelda where you have your sword and shield.
Not that there's puzzles or anything, but just the way you fight the enemies, I think is kind of along those lines.
The perspective as well. But I think the game really does shine with having that shop mechanic. Maybe just because it's something different, but it's such a cute and wholesome thing to do afterwards, and
and it's a nice break too, because some of the dungeons you're you can teleport out of them at any time, so you can just by paying a little bit of money, and you're kind of stressed oh, should I push for another room to make a bit more money, or should I just go? And so after you have more of those those moments, or you're fighting a tough boss, you just get past, you kind of get that nice 5-10 minutes to recalibrate yourself in town, sell your stuff, go through your inventory. I really appreciate that, at least. But my favorite part of the game, and I have to bring it up because last episode we were talking about game mechanics that we don't like. Right. And this is a good thing. This is a good thing. And it's one thing we agreed on is games that waste your time for various reasons. It sucks, right? And I have to praise Moonlighter on how it handles its inventories, because it is so advanced, more than a lot of other games I've played. So when you have your inventory in Moonlighter, and you're going around to the say you want to go to the armory. This is a good example. And you wanted to craft yourself a new sword.
Yes.
So you've got the items, you got enough money in your bag. You also have to get a few drops from enemies and, find 10 broken swords and a bar of iron or whatever it is.
Right. That's how you make a sword.
Well, as far as I know. But in this game, you don't actually have to have the supplies in your backpack. You can, whatever you have in your possession at all, whether it be in your backpack or in your chest at home, you can just use those supplies to craft. So you don't have to be running back and forth and filling your backpack and leaving other stuff at home, like you can just use it all at once. And it just saves you so much time.
It's so incredibly nice. The other thing too, if I remember correctly from having played it, is like you can also like favorite something that you're saving up to buy. So like say you want that sword and you know you need 10 broken swords to build a new sword, which raises the question where those broken swords came from in the first place.
But I think they're melting them down into the metal,
Yes, I think so. But like, anyway, you need those swords and maybe you need some goo or like whatever the three ingredients are. Yeah.
The glue to stick the iron bar to the 10 broken swords.
Exactly. Imagine if it fell apart in the dungeon. You need your swords, you need your goo, you need whatever, a bat wing probably, who knows. Yeah. And you can favorite that sword item. So then when you get any of those ingredients, it shows up with that little like favorite symbol. So you know to keep it and not to sell it. Exactly. And then you're not constantly checking like your menus like, wait, what did I need? Like, oh, I have that favorited. I know that that's important. Yeah. And that too was such a nice especially integration. It's
especially true when you're stocking your shop. I think the reason they did this is because they don't want you being like, okay, I'm going to sell these gold bars. Oh, wait, do I need those for an item?
Yes.
Let me check my menu. Then you got to click there. Then you got to find the one you want. Then you got to, count how many you have, whatever it is. But this game is just like that highlight when you put a favorite on something. It doesn't go away no matter what menu you're in. Mm-hmm. So whether that's crafting or your chest or you're setting up your store, like that always stays. Yes. It's so helpful.
It's very, very user-friendly, which like I very much appreciate.
Yeah. So I really appreciate Moonlighter. There's 5 dungeons and then 4 dungeons and a final one. So I just beat the first one this morning. Okay. And I have started the second one, really digging it. I'm hoping to beat it soon. The other thing I was playing was Persona. I finally started Persona 5 The Royal, but I'm only a few hours in. Really enjoying it so far, but we've done enough Persona stuff on this podcast already.
Yeah, we'll let that sit and tease a little bit longer. We'll see how it goes.
I'll check in with it. I'm going to be playing it for a while just in the background, so I'm sure I'll bring it up here and there when I've had a slower week or something, but... I think that will do us for the games we've been playing. So we will be back just after the break to talk about the news and the new Dualsense controller. All right, Kate, we are back, and it's time for the news. So, actually, a pretty big thing happened this last week. Geoff Keighley got a hands-on demo with the Dualsense controller, and this is our first time actually seeing it, not in a promotional kind of image, and actually someone using the controller. So, he had the controller. I think it was about 20 minutes long. He kind of outlined... the physical controller itself, some of the features they've already spoken about, like the haptic feedback, the increased volume on the speaker, better quality on there. Yeah. And then he also played about 5 or 6 minutes of Astrobot's Playroom, which is, I think for the first time we learned that it was actually going to be packaged in with the system and built in upon release. Yeah,
it comes like even like pre-installed on every PlayStation 5, which is interesting.
So what did you think of the controller now that we've seen it be used?
Yeah, I'm getting a lot more... familiar, I guess, and comfortable with the controller. I still think that I have that slight concern that it is a bit bigger.
It really does look bigger
than
now,
the other ones, and Geoff said it's like actually lighter and kind of smaller than he anticipated, which is comforting. But I think it still is a little bit bigger than the DualShock.
It definitely looked bigger. Where it looked bigger to me, just from what I could see, was I think like the handles on the left and right look I don't know if they're thicker, but they look a lot bit longer,
like wider, or like slightly bigger. And as someone who has quite small hands, and like maybe the Joy-Cons for the Switch are a little bit too small and too much in that direction, but I always kind of want a small and like more comfortable controller.
I think the DualShock 4 is like the perfect size.
I think the DualShock is still comfortable. Like I would even have the DualShock maybe even be slightly smaller, but like it's perfectly acceptable, and I think it's my favorite controller. I really like it. So I'm still a little concerned with the size, but I mean maybe for the average person it'll be perfect.
What did you think of the look of it now that we've had more time removed? Because I know it was really divisive between people when we first saw it. Yeah. I personally think like in person, I actually like it a little bit more, but I'm worried about its appearance over time, because the white always kind of picks up that gunk, and not that I keep my stuff dirty, like I clean it, but it's white's always going to have that problem.
Yeah, I think I like it in general. I don't know if it really stands out as like, oh, that's a pretty controller. Like, it's just nice and clean looking. I think it will be cool maybe to get some different color schemes. I always you always get enticed by those like limited edition like special versions. So like I think maybe that might be kind of neat, but overall in just terms of how it's going to function, I'm really excited about it. Like,
we got to see a little bit of that while he was playing Astrobot as well, like with the different weathers and whatnot within the game. I'm interested to see how sensitive and impressive the haptics are, like the different rumble.
Yeah, like it looked really neat to me. Like there was that section in Astrobot where he played as that frog who's kind of got like springy legs. Mm-hmm. So the legs, I guess, like you would sort of contract them and then you'd spring outwards. And it looked like he had quite a bit of control over like how far he sprang. And like obviously this game is sort of made to be like a demo for these features. So it's going to be like really optimized. And we'll see like how many games it really like actually makes its way into and is a really big integral part of the gameplay. But at the very least, I think it looks like it is kind of a neat feature, and like I could very much see it be used in different games to like give that player like a neat feedback. Like every time they brought it up, and I think Geoff even brought it up again in this video, was like drawing a bowstring.
Always the bowstring.
It's always the bowstring, but like, oh man, I'm thinking like Ghost of Tsushima has like a very nice satisfying bow feel, but like what if even that string had even more of that like resistance and weight to it, and I'm excited about those small details, and I want to get my hands on this controller.
Don't we all? Hey? It's a weird way to get it displayed, I think, by watching someone else use it. Like to me, the haptics aren't really what has me interested. I'm interested to see what they can do with the built-in speaker, because I always thought that was such a cool inclusion on the DualShock 4, but it was never really used for anything that significant. And if more often than not, I almost found myself like, and I know a lot of my friends actually just turn it off. Like especially in certain games like Rocket League, it just ends up doing these annoying sounds when you customize your car, and like I actively didn't like it.
Right.
So I mean, some games it adds something here and there, but it's very minimal. And because I think they said something about doing voice chat like over this speaker while you're playing online. Like I'm just wondering exactly how that's going to be implemented, or like what kind of more important things it might be used for this generation.
Yeah, well, it might be interesting. Like Geoff like tried to show him. He did his best to try to show it off. Like he was holding the controller up to like whatever he was recording with, and he's like, I really hope you can hear this. But like he was like kind of like walking through snow at one point, and there was like the little like mushy sounds of his feet going in the snow, and like it sounded really neat, and that coming from the controller is kind of interesting to give you that sort of dynamic sound coming from the controller, but also your speakers, and like
I think it's a bit of a gimmick, honestly. Like
I think it's one of those things that will just maybe be kind of interesting in a couple specific games, but probably won't get utilized to the extent that they want to use it, or that they're going to advertise like it's a big feature.
Yeah, exactly.
But I do see it being like kind of interesting if it is.
It could be cool. Like, it's got the potential to add, right? What did you think of Astrobot? I know it's just it's like the tech demo game, whatever, but I mean, it looked like it has the potential to be a bit more than that. Like it obviously looks like it's not knockoff, but like strongly influenced by like a 3D Mario type thing, running around collecting coins, like doing some simple challenges. It doesn't look too intense or anything, but I mean, it's a free game. They said it's multi-hour experience, whatever that means. It'll probably be like,
2 hours?
Collectibles and whatever in certain levels.
50 hours?
But, it's a packing game though. And I mean, anything like that I think is a good thing.
Yeah, I think it's great. I think it's like, I'm always excited by having a game pre-built in, like even if it just is there to be like a tech demo to show off the console, that's really cool and fun. And like I'm excited to boot it up the first time I download or I buy my PS5. Like I'm probably gonna buy a game with it, and maybe that will take precedent over Astrobot.
of course.
Hopefully. But I think it's kind of neat, and I think like it looks like maybe like you play 2 hours and it's a cute, wholesome experience. Like
yeah.
And like the other thing too is I think it looks like it'd probably be a really good game for kids.
That's true. Because you buy your PS5, you buy it with some game you want to play, like new Assassin's Creed. Obviously, your kid's not going to play, well, depending who you are, maybe, but depending on their age, they might not be able to. There's Astrobot for free. Yeah,
exactly. It's like, okay, Dad bought this for himself, but also I've justified this purchase. It's also for like young Timmy. He can play Astrobot.
It's perfect. Kate, let's move on to our second story for the day. This one comes from Push Square, where they have an article which mentions how kind of some stock situations for the PS5 in terms of like, the launch of the system, since we're getting closer to that every episode. And it looks like there's going to be restrictions on one pre-order per person when the PS5 launches. So I don't know exactly how they're going to police that in different stores. Like I know it says on the article here that the PlayStation official store looks like it will have a disclaimer that says you can't buy more than one when you go to the checkout, like on their store. But I guess I don't know if that's specific to like PlayStation itself, or if they're going to tell other retailers who are doing pre-orders to do the same thing, right? Which is interesting. And
now we should clarify on this as well, that this isn't like an official statement Sony's put out saying that this is a rule, but this is something that people have noticed as an error message coming up on their website. And it seems extremely likely that this is going to be the case.
It would make sense, right? Because they would they're going to have limited numbers at launch. I think they said 9 or 10 million from what I saw. Like that, I mean, that sounds like a lot, right? But there's going to be more people that want a PlayStation 5 than that. You'd think those numbers are correct. Whatever it is, I think it makes sense to limit it in the sense that it just allows more people to get the system. You don't have to worry about resellers on the internet.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's unfortunate because, like there might be some instances where a household might want 2 copies or like 2 systems. I guess it's not a copy, but 2, and that's unfortunate. But I think it does more good than it does harm. Like if stock is going to be limited, then, it gives everyone a little bit more of like a fair chance of getting one.
Was it per household or per person?
I think it's like per person, but I guess that extends to like, if.
Yeah, maybe you have to put your address in or something. It depends how they were to do it.
Yeah, that's not quite clear, but it is,
and like you said, it's speculation. So.
Yeah, it's a limitation for sure, but I think it's better than it is worse. To give everyone a bit more of a chance to get one is good, and then also it eliminates that issue of people buying out stock and reselling it,
100%.
Which is like such a scummy, horrible thing to do, but it always seems to come up with big, like purchases and like...
It's the hype coming around to the system. Like everyone's going to want... one of these new systems, whether it's PlayStation or Xbox or what they want, it's just going to come down to supply and demand. What I'm interested in knowing is like what happens if, I think everyone would agree like Xbox is doing some really good stuff, but I think PlayStation for sure obviously is more sales wise is more popular these days. I'm interested to know like in the bigger picture of the launch, like if Sony's more limited in quantity, I wonder if more people, how strong people's ties are to PlayStation as a brand to be like, oh, I'll wait for when I can actually get one, rather than just like, oh, screw it, I just buy a few games a year, like I'll just buy this Xbox.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I think there might be like a small section of people that might run into that. But then again, it also brings up the question like, will Microsoft's stock be limited as well? Like they might be having the same kind of like manufacturing issues that Sony's having, given like, like...
Yeah,
there's only so much resource.
They haven't said too much either way. Like neither company really has, other than like this type of stuff, which is speculation. So hard to know. Yeah,
that'll be interesting. Yeah, maybe the 10 people that are stuck in the middle are like, oh, PlayStation sold out, I'll buy an Xbox. But then there's 10 more people like, oh no, now Xbox is sold out, I'll buy a PlayStation. So maybe they balance out.
You never know. All I hope is that I'm one of the people on the list to be able to get one.
Well, Geoff said in the presentation, and Sony has said multiple times they're going to give us lots of like time to prepare. They're going to give us like a big window of like, here's time to pre-order. You'll know the date. You'll know the time. So like that's going to be in the calendar.
It's going to be like when I was buying my Metallica tickets for the concert.
Exactly. We were at work. Like,
I got us in. Oh
like
man,
left a meeting early. Like,
I actually
bought
ditched
those tickets.
I ditched out on a meeting at work that day to be ready to buy the tickets. So I'll do the same thing again. I swear to God.
Yeah, exactly. Like so, I think like if you're really on top of it, then hopefully with those restrictions, it'll give everyone a chance to really prioritize and get a console.
Well, we'll find out soon. But until we do that, we will take another short break and then be right back with the Choose Your Own Adventure, which I really hope I make it to the end. We'll see.
Well, we'll see.
We'll be right back. All right, everyone, we are back. It's time to end the show by doing a Choose Your Own Adventure challenge. I don't know anything about this, but Kate designed this. I don't know how long you've had it going for her. Is there any kind of backstory?
Well, I will leave it up to a bit of a mystery, but I will say that I've been playing a lot of Ghost of Tsushima. I've been riding my horse around a lot. It's one of the big things you do, and I also have been playing Erica, which is a Choose Your Own Adventure. So what happens if you put some horse riding and a Choose Your Own Adventure together? You get the Red Dead Redemption Choose Your Own Adventure Challenge.
Oh, great. Am I Arthur Morgan?
Well, would be nice if you were, wouldn't it?
I guess.
So a little bit of context for this. When I first got Red Dead, James came over to watch
sequel?
me. The sequel, sorry, 2. Red Dead 2. James came over a couple times and sort of watched me play a little bit. And, I was getting used to the controls a little bit, and it can be a little bit finicky. And
Fell down a few hills,
made a couple mistakes, and we sort of started running with this narrative that my Arthur Morgan wasn't as competent as he seemed.
He's an overly confident cowboy that makes a lot of mistakes.
Yeah, so we sort of kind of started running with it like he was like, not quite all there in the head, and that like he's Dutch's like second-hand man, because like, oh, Arthur, you sure are important.
I classify him almost like a Dwight Schrute.
Yeah, exactly. So I haven't beat the game, but I played through from that moment on, like with that in my mind as like my weird dumb like
your headcanon.
My headcanon of like this horrible Arthur. So I've written you Choose Your Own Adventure in the style of my Arthur Morgan, and we'll see how your adventure ends. So, the sun is shining into the camp at Horseshoe Overlook as you awake to the smell of Pearson's famous stew and think to yourself, sure is a fine day to be a cowboy.
Boy, howdy.
Boy, howdy. You slide out of your cot, saunter over to your hat, and call to your friends a good morning howdy. You are Arthur Morgan, Dutch's #1 man and the greatest cowboy to ever ride in the Wild West, although perhaps not as good as John Marston, I'm not sure yet. Today, you are tasked with riding to Valentine to pick up a bounty for the local sheriff. As you head towards your ever-faithful horse Biscuit, eager to get an early start on your day, your stomach rumbles and you can't help but notice a familiar stew pot, half full and simmering over a contained fire. Do you A, set out for Valentine immediately? You don't want to risk having to search for an unlawful wildcat in the dark.
Absolutely not.
Or B, have your fill of coffee and stew before heading out, knowing that breakfast is the most important meal of the day and you'll need your strength for the trials ahead.
Okay, first of all, you've written this like very professionally. I'm blown away. But to answer that question, it is obvious that anyone that knows me, I will not leave without a cup of coffee. So I will go with a coffee and stew.
Aw, hell. There's plenty time, you think to yourself. I got a 6-shooter horse and I'll make it to Valentine in no time. You grab your bowl and fill yourself a generous portion. You are pleased with the first bite and proceed to dump the remaining stew onto your face in a fluid motion.
Oh, John.
Content, you turn to the coffee when Tilly blocks your path. Pony up, Mr. Morgan.
Hey, hold on a sec. Who's Tilly? Who's
this guy? She's one of your other followers at camp.
Okay.
She's a generic girl,
I want all the info.
She blocks your path. Pony up, Mr. Morgan. I challenge you to a round of dominoes. Faced with 2 distractions, you have forgotten your plans and agree to play for the entire day. Lose a core.
Lose a core? What is a core?
So in Red Dead, your like health and life is like your like health core.
Oh, I see.
So you unfortunately are down 1.
Shit. Okay.
Would you like to select another option?
Oh, I've already instead of the stew.
Instead of the stew.
Well, you know what? If you're gonna give me a backtrack, a get out of jail free, I will in fact leave.
Wonderful.
Instead.
All right, you have only 2 lives left out of your 3, but let's see how you do. Instead, you will set out for Valentine immediately. There's no time to waste. You saddle your horse and you're off like a bolt of lightning. A true survival expert, you are well equipped to handle the day fending for yourself, having put some pre-cooked meat strips in your pocket a few days back. Besides, Valentine shopkeep Buckshot Bronto McCoy always gives you a good deal on canned peaches.
That's a sick name.
This is living. Racing across the heartlands, carefree stags bound in the grass and birds sing the songs of freedom as you head north. The mountains towering in the distance is a beacon of invitation. You feel the power of your horse as if it were your own, and you know that with the wind in your hair and the smell of the land this is the very essence of being alive. Your bliss is interrupted by an agonized scream. Help! Oh, Christ, please, mister. In the distance.
I can't get over how actually competent you are at these southern accents.
It's the only accent I know how to do.
This is a complete surprise to me.
But right now, in the distance, you see a man writhing and clutching his leg. Biscuit slows instinctively as you approach, and the man explains he's been bitten by a venomous snake and requires immediate medical attention. Do you A, suck the venom out of his wound, or B, ride on, this ain't your business?
Well, this ain't my business. Listen, I would stop and help this guy in real life, but the thing is, I feel like my guy here is a little bit incompetent, and he'll probably end up sucking the poison like into his own system and kill himself. So I'm gonna get going.
That is a danger. We will get going. All right.
No, Timmy, take it back. I'm gonna mosey.
Oh, you're gonna
I'm gonna mosey on down the road.
All right. Well, that was secret option C, the correct option. You tip your hat in a friendly howdy as you pick up speed again, thinking to yourself,
Addy.
What an unusual fellow. A few moments later, you arrive in Valentine and hitch your horse outside of the sheriff's office. Inside, you are directed to a wanted poster, freshly hung up. Black Buford, known for his big revolver and little hat.
What?
He's wanted for accidentally pulling out his gun in Strawberry when he was trying to brush his horse. Wanted...
Red Dead.
It happens. It's very common. He's wanted dead or alive. You feel a pang of regret for Buford, knowing it's not always easy to be a good man. And maybe if his revolver hadn't been so big, it might have gone unnoticed, and he could have lived a simple life as Brown Buford. But the world goes on whether we want it to or not, and you know that Dutch will be so proud if you bring home that $100 reward. Sheriff Moses Justice O'Connor tells you Black Buford was last seen camping in the Grizzlies and warns you to be careful. The sun is setting as you trek up along the cliffside, halfway up the mountain, reins in one hand, peaches in the other. Your eyes are keen, searching the ground for clues, your ears peeled, waiting for the rustle of movement. You come to a fork in the path. Do you A, turn right and head further up the cliff, or B, continue straight?
There's like nothing to go on.
What does your heart tell you?
I will go, it's up the cliff?
Turn right and head further up the cliff?
Yeah, I'm going to go with that because I feel like the high ground is always the best when you're looking for someone.
Well, come on, girl. You coax Biscuit further up the mountain. As you proceed, the path narrows, and the uneven ground becomes increasingly treacherous. As the path curves to the left, you turn Biscuit's reins, but your hands, slick with peach juice, slip and twist in an impossibly incorrect direction. Biscuit, with complete faith in you, turns willingly into a rubble death trap. Rocks slide, hooves fumble, and gravity puts in overtime.
Oh, dang.
Man and steed landslide, head over hoof, and disappear into the darkness. Lose a core.
Man, sure. This
That's
isn't going so well, you know?
Well,
I should have known that too, because you fell down that hillside when I was watching you, so it's probably exactly the same.
I fell down a hill.
The same situation was bound to be my fate as well.
Mm-hmm.
Shit.
It
All right, I got one more chance.
All right, you can continue straight if you choose to
One more lucky
proceed.
chance. One more spit of my chewing tobacco.
All right, continuing along, you hear the faint sound of a river, which grows stronger and more turbulent as you approach. As you round a bend, the river comes into view, along with signs of a camp, a fire crackling on the bank. You are shocked by the sheer size of Buford, mountainous and hunched over the fire, roasting a prairie dog and whistling a little ditty. Do you A, silently unravel your lasso and catch him unaware, or B, unholster your revolver and step into the clearing, asking him to put your hands where I can see 'em?
Jeez. Now, here's the thing. I feel like he may have, like, people around, but I don't know how effective I'm going to be with that lasso. I ain't no Wonder Woman, In fact, the women are probably like not doing any of this type of stuff.
No, they're at
in
home
Red
playing
Dead.
dominoes.
They clean and playing dominoes in Red Dead Redemption. I am gonna tell him to put his hands up. Reach for the sky.
All right, is that your final answer?
Do it.
All right. It's over, Buford. You hear? I reckon this can go one of two ways, and you ain't gonna want to put up a fight if you know what's good for you. Buford's eyes are wide, and they're wild. They're probably also wide. And he charges you with a pure animal instinct. You ain't speak English, you plumb bastard.
You ain't speaking English.
You cock your revolver and shoot. A perfect shot.
Hell yeah.
Dead eye.
Yes.
Buford's hilariously small hat is blown off. And within seconds, he is felled and no longer breathing.
Hell yeah.
You hog-tie Buford and stow him on your horse, 3 sizes too small to carry such a man. We done good, girl. You give Biscuit a pat as the
I don't know about that one.
No. That's what he says.
Is that actually what he says?
It's really weird. Never have a girl horse, because it's like they actually had a voice actor said he had to like re-record his like horse lines because they sounded like weird and sexual. Like, awful, but they're still kind of weird. But anyway, you give Biscuit a pat as the two of you head back to Valentine, munching on oatcakes and drunk on victory.
Hell yeah. Drunk on
You
victory
did
for the next 3
it.
days. I can't believe. Wow, I'm really impressed.
You did it.
You seem to really add a lot of details from like Red Dead 2 into this.
It is hopefully yeah.
Is this a real side quest?
This is not a real side quest, but it's very much my experience of like walking around severely underweight, having only eaten peaches and like falling off cliffs and everything's horrible.
Oh god, yeah. I feel like for that game, it's so easy to like make some stupid mistake by just pressing a button one time or something.
Yes, absolutely. The controls are like, they're competent in the sense that like there's just a lot of like things you can do, but they're finicky in the way that it's a lot of like hold down this button and then it changes your controls. So like if you hold down L2, then now square does something different than it used to do. So it's a lot of like,
it's like layers and complexity onto what is on its face like a traditional control scheme, but it's not that simple when you actually start playing. Yeah,
exactly. So you're all the time like accidentally pulling out a weapon you don't mean to, and then like the town gets upset with you and you're like, oh god, like it wasn't what I wanted, and then you fall off a cliff and then you have a concussion. Like,
that's too bad.
Great.
That's too bad.
Well, I'm proud of you.
I'm blown away. This is good.
You did very well.
And I would be proud of all of our listeners if they sent in some listener questions for next episode, like we said at the start of the show, because we'd love to do a listener question mailbag type segment as a bonus part of the show for next time on our 10th episode anniversary. We hit double digits, right? You got to celebrate somehow. So let's hope we get at least a few. And we'll go from there. If you have the questions to send in, you can send them to circlesandsquarespod@gmail.com. Just spelt out, no ampersand, it's the AND for and. You can also find us on Twitter at CANDSpod. It's got links to our email and other stuff as well, our YouTube. And you can find us on any podcast service, wherever you're listening to us right now. Thank you very much for listening, and we'll be back again in 2 weeks to talk about PlayStation for our double-digit number 10 special episode. See you then. The intro and outro music for Circles and Squares was produced by friend of the show, Matthew Chan. Interlude music is from Scott Gratton of the Free Music Archive. Our channel art was created by @unreasonable on Twitter, and our brother Alex is the designer of the Circles and Squares logo. Thank you all for listening and supporting the show.